My dad practically gave me up to his sister from the moment I was born. My mom died when she was giving birth to me. And my aunt told me he never recovered from that because he blamed me for her dying. It hurt a lot as a kid that at family events he would ignore my existence. When I was a little older, he got more vocal about me killing her, and he can't stand to look at my face. You can imagine the amount of therapy that put me in. I used to go to church crying because I was scared about going to hell for doing that to my mom. That's how much his words me up. But the shitty part was that I never stopped trying to be accepted by him. After my high school graduation, he told me to never bother him again since he legally has no obligation to me anymore, since he was sending my aunt money to take care of me. Around that time is when I finally started accepting that reality, so from there we moved on with our lives. My aunt doesn't talk to me about him. Sometimes my grandparents do, and that's how I found out he got married. They were mad he didn't invite me to their wedding, but to me it didn't matter because we're not close. But it was his wife who wanted to meet me. It's the first time ever that he wants to make contact, and it was to pretty much say she wants me on their life. She doesn't know the real reason about why we're estranged. He asked me to please not say anything, and maybe this could be a way to reconcile after all. But he was only doing it for her. That much was clear when we talked. I never said I would be. He still insisted on us meeting at their place because she really wanted to meet me. All she thinks is we were estranged for not getting along in my teenager years, going to college and losing touch because of life stuff. It pissed me off that he played it off as us just not talking for petty reasons. Meanwhile, the actually reason damaged me for years. I told her the truth. Everything he said to me. That he was never a parent to me, that was all my aunt. It was definitely a shock for her. The outcome was a disaster. Everyone has heard about this now. My grandmas in particular told me she understands my anger. But this was his chance finding someone since losing my mom, and now it's been put in jeopardy. My dad is devastated. They think it was going too far to ruin his marriage that way when he was willing to include me in their lives, which could have been the start of our relationship. And they say not only did I ruin that, but also possibly wrecked his marriage. She just doesn't agree at all with what he did, and it could have been avoided if I didn't say anything. For me, it was hard not to tell the truth after the lies made it seem like it was nothing serious. I couldn't ignore what happened after what it did. If it was the right call, since it put their whole marriage at risk after all. I believe it started when I was around 6 years old. My parents often had friends over in the house. I didn't know they were polyamorous OFC. One day I was outside playing, got hurt, and when I ran inside caught my parents making out with some random guy. They told me they have other adults that they love and it's a completely normal thing. Me being a child just accepted that. They gave up being secretive and their partners would constantly be around, even joining on outings. I remember that on my 10th birthday they invited 3 of their partners, one of who I'd never seen before. And for the rest of the day my parents just withdrew from my party and hung out with them. I never saw them doing anything explicit again, but they would kiss their partners, hug them, make flirty comments. Something that would be normal between parents, but with many more people. Sometimes I came home from school and my parents were gone and there was some random adult in our house. Some of them seemed surprised that my parents even had a child. I always hated it, but since my parents had told me this was normal, I assumed many adults probably did similar things and that it's just an adult thing all kids hate. Later they had less partners and eventually seemed to stop. Not that I'd know for sure. I moved out with 17. I didn't think about it anymore. A year ago I started therapy, other reasons. As usual, the topic of my upbringing came up and it brought back many feelings I wasn't aware of. I realized that although my parents were always good to me, I had never really felt close to any of them and still have a lot of resentment, that they made me feel like I had to compete for my parents' attention with random strangers. A while ago, I visited them and they told me they are going to take part in a documentary about polyamorous families, and that the producers would like to include interviews with the children. So they would love if I could agree and tell everyone that polyamory doesn't mess kids up. All my resentment bubbled up and I said that I cannot agree because I would not be able to say anything positive. My parents looked shocked. I had never brought this up before, and asked why, and I unloaded all that I always felt pushed aside. We barely had any family time without strangers intruding. It turned into an argument and I became loud and yelled that the truth is it did me up and they shouldn't have had a child. My mother cried and my father said I should probably leave. So I left and was shaken up for the rest of the week, but also felt regret because I've never made my mom cry before. Later my father sent me a message that was like, "We are sorry you feel that way. Can we have a calm discussion about this soon?" Even though I tried to, it's like I can't reply. This argument brought something very emotional up in me. 2 years ago my house burnt to the ground after being struck by lightning. Thankfully it was during the day, so our 3 kids were at school and my husband and I were at work. We lost everything, but we were safe. It took almost 11 months for the insurance to pay out. The insurance covered 1 month worth of hotel stays, but after that we were made to fend for ourselves, and the only option we had was to move in with my SIL. She tells us we can have her spare room and her office space. Since she used neither of the rooms and her stipulations was we needed to purchase all of our own food and pay her $100 a week. By week 3 all of that changed. She then decides we need to pay her $250 a week and we can only use 1 room. So all 5 of us were crammed into the smallest room she had, which was the size of a glorified closet space and didn't even fit a twin bed and a small dresser. So we lived out of trash bags and slept on the floor for close to $1,000 a month some months, and still had to purchase all of our own food, despite her claiming my children on her food stamps. She also had no bills outside of her land tax, $450 a year, electric and heating oil, which she hardly ever filled. So we were essentially paying her so she could do leisure activities. It was the worst 8 months of my life. 3 months ago my grandmother decided that she wanted to go to assisted living after a fall and transferred the deed of her house to me, and basically said it was mine now. It is a 5-bedroom farmhouse. My boys insist on sharing a room, so we have 2 extra bedrooms. Well, my sister-in-law lost her house last month due to not paying her land tax for several years and asked if her and her stepdaughter could stay with us until they get enough money to move down south. I said sure, 1 bedroom, $800 a month, and you have to buy and cook all your food separately because my daughter is vegan. She looked at me like I had 10 heads and said that she and her stepdaughter should not be made to share a room when there are 2 extra rooms, and stated she cannot afford a rent of $800 while purchasing all of her own food on top of it. I said, neither could we, but we managed to cram 5 people into a glorified closet space while you were getting $1,000 and food stamps. Take it or leave it. She decided to leave. I am living with my family. It's me, a 15-year-old girl, my twin brothers who are 17, and my parents. My dad cusses a lot, and so do my older brothers. But apparently the standards are different for me. My dad overheard me saying a couple cuss words when I was on the phone with my friends, and he got mad at me for my language and for how trashy and unladylike it was. This wasn't the first time he called me, and only me, out for bad language. But it was the one that frustrated me the most because I could tell there was a double standard. I thought of calling him out on his language and hypocrisy, but then I had a different idea. I said that, yeah, it was a bad habit I was forming and didn't want to make a pattern, because if I got in the habit of cussing a lot, that wouldn't make me come off well when I start getting jobs or going to college. And as I was growing up, I wanted to learn how to speak respectfully and intelligently. But it was hard to keep from bad habits when I heard him and my brothers having potty mouth syndrome so often. They're setting an example whether they realize it or not. So I wanted to work on things for myself, but also together as a family. I suggested we make a swear tax where if anyone swears in front of anyone else who's participating, they give $1 to each person who heard them. I'd want that rule for myself because it would keep me accountable, and I'd really like it if the family joined me for it. So my dad said he'd join, and so would my mom. They got my brothers to be a part of it too. They didn't really have a choice. My parents decided to make it a rule. I know it's kinda petty, but I wanted to make the point that my dad and brothers swear a lot and I almost never do. In the few months we've had the rule, I've gotten about $250 from hearing my dad and brothers cuss, and have not sworn once. It's kinda making my brothers angry because they often cuss when they're mad, and I ask them for money, so they get madder and cuss more. So I get more money until they shut up. My dad actually got mad at me too. He was having some drinks, calling his brother and talking. And I came over after and asked for $18. He actually said he wouldn't give me that much, and there should be a cutoff. He gave me $5, which sends a weird message. Like swearing is bad, unless you want to swear a lot, then it's cool. I did it because I know I swear the least out of my family, but I was the only one getting in trouble for it.